Hey guys, we're going to be talking about cardio today and what kind of cardio is actually going to help you the most with your fat loss goals. This is a question I get a ton. But before we dive into this, I want to make sure that we all have a solid foundation of energy balance, meaning what is required to see fat loss within the body. So with that being said, we're going to start this video out with a recap on energy balance. So what is energy balance? So you can kind of think of this as a scale. So energy in, which would be what you eat and what you drink, if it matches energy out, and energy out can come down to genetics, muscle mass, physical activity, just daily non-exercise activity. It can also come down to thermic effect of food. What is that one? Okay, so thermic effect of food is the cost or the energy that your body uses in order to digest food. So did you know that some food actually uses more energy in the body to digest? For example, protein is one of those. Whole foods as well has shown an increase of up to 20% more energy being used to digest those. So the kind of food we eat really does matter when we're playing the long game. But that is basically what energy out is. So energy in is that food, those calories coming in. Energy out is such things as like the body just trying to keep the lights on, do everything that it needs to keep things functioning and working well. In addition, it is the energy that it uses to digest food, to do your workouts, and to just handle your daily movement and activity. And I'm gonna throw in one that most people don't think about as far as energy out, and that's things like just fidgeting and just your daily movements. And the reason why I bring that up is because I'm a hands talker, so guilty. I am definitely a mover, and your body starts making adjustments when you get into a calorie deficit. And one of those is that it can start slowing things down, and my hand movements kind of get less as I go into a calorie deficit. But we're going to be talking about why that is and how we see that happen, because that does play a role in fat loss. It's an adaptation that your body starts to make. So with that being said, now you know, okay, so we can control the energy coming in as far as foods coming in. We can control energy going out as far as our daily activity goes and our overall movement. Now, when we are getting more energy out than energy in, what's going to happen to that scale is it's going to tip, and we are going to experience something called an energy deficit or a calorie deficit. And when you have more energy out than energy coming in, your body is going to start turning to fat cells, and it is going to use the energy there to get the energy it needs to just keep moving, keep the lights on, and keep its daily activity level where it wants to. So that's what causes fat loss. So when it comes to weightlifting and cardio, we obviously can see that they play a little role in that energy out. So if we want to increase energy out, we can utilize those two methods. But I'm going to be really honest with you. Resistance training or weightlifting isn't going to really increase that energy out all that much. So I want to make something very clear. We don't lift weights to get some radical increase in energy out. What we are using weightlifting for is to make sure that we either maintain muscle mass or put a little muscle mass on. Now, the reason for that is because most people come to me and they talk a lot about fat loss, But it's not just about fat loss. It's how you look and how you feel when the body fat comes off. And retaining as much muscle mass as we can really help with both the look as well as how you feel, as well as being able to eat a little bit more when you do push your calories back up to maintenance or find that energy balance all over again. So that's what we use resistance training for, is we use it to maintain muscle mass while we are in this calorie or energy deficit. Cardio, though, can be used for multiple health effects, but the question at hand is, how can it assist with fat loss? So let's directly talk about that. Do you have to do cardio to lose body fat? Do you have to do it in order to see more body fat come off? These are questions that I often get. And the answer is no, you actually don't have to do cardio. Just restricting energy coming in, just getting into a caloric deficit can be enough to allow you to see fat loss. So the next question is, well, can we increase the amount of fat loss we see by introducing cardio? And if so, what kind is best? So obviously we can increase energy going out if we introduce more cardio. But before you get too excited and jump on the treadmill every single day for 45 minutes, let's use a few studies and kind of break this down and see what this really looks like. So we know that the idea is it can increase energy out, but the question is how much, and is it really beneficial, and how often should I use it, and what kind should I use? So I'm going to show you a graph that I got from a study. Now keep in mind, these are averages, these are generalities. It's actually impossible to really know and be able to say everybody is going to experience the exact same amount of calories burned walking. There's so many variables in that we can't say. So when we're using these graphs and talking about these things, keep in mind that we are talking about generalities that we see in populations. So I'm going to show you this graph here. It shows a lot of different activities, and it actually shows on the right-hand side how many calories you burn per activity. So just hanging out, just resting, you're going to burn anywhere between 1.2 to 1.7. Now keep in mind, obviously there's some variability with that, but this is a general good, okay, that's about how much I'm going to burn. Now keep in mind, this is sedentary, this is resting, because remember, your body still is using energy to just keep the lights on with its daily functions. You got a lot of organs in there doing a lot of work, and it's still going to use energy even at rest. So as you look down, you can kind of scroll through these different activities. You will notice that the more intense the activity, we start burning more calories. So if we're just looking at walking at a moderately fast pace, 3 miles per hour, we're probably going to burn anywhere between 4 and 6 calories a minute. Then you keep going down, you notice that you speed up, you're walking faster, 4.5 miles per hour. Now we're moving to like 6 to 8 range. You start jogging now, it could be like around 8.5, 8 to 12. I mean, as the exercise gets more intense, we're going to see an increase in the amount of calories burned. So that's really cool to know, but how does that apply to you? Well, let's look at this as far as what this looks like throughout your day. So we're going to take Jane. Let's take Jane. Jane is pretty sedentary. Her daily expenditure a minute is going to be 1.5. So over a 24-hour period, her maintenance is going to look like 2160, right? So 2,160 calories is what she's going to burn throughout the day. That's her maintenance. That's keeping that scale balanced. Now let's introduce some cardio and see how that changes her energy needs. So now we're going to say, hey, let's have you do 45 minutes of jogging, right? More of like a moderate type of jogging. So if that's about 7.5 calories being burned per minute over 45 minutes, then that's going to look at about 360 calories. So if we take that 2160 and subtract that 45 minutes and then replace it with that 45 minutes, not of being sedentary, but now of being active, we see that her new maintenance that's going to balance out that scale is going to be 2452. Now, keep in mind, that's about a 300 calorie increase. 300 calories, guys. Now, before you get too excited about that, let me just reiterate what I said before, that there has to be some type of cognitive oversight over nutrition. Because if there's not, and if you're just depending on additional cardio to drive fat loss, then you're going to be highly disappointed. The reason why is about 300 calories, 1.5 chocolate chip cookies, that's about 300 calories. A handful of almonds, that's about 300. Well, that's like 350 calories. An avocado, 300 to 350 calories. So very easily, if you are not careful about what's coming in, you're just going to end up eating a little bit more and be right back at maintenance. So although we can increase the energy expenditure throughout the day, let me just make sure you understand this very clearly, that cardio is no substitute for a poor diet. Cardio will not be a good substitute for somebody who is not being consistent and accurate to their diet. We cannot outrun the fork. In fact, the more energy out, the more you increase energy out, what's going to happen is the body is then going to send more hunger signals to you. So you end up eating a little bit more so that it balances out. The body doesn't know what you're trying to do. It doesn't know that you really want fat loss. It just notices, oh, we are expending more energy. I'm going to send more hunger signals so that we can eat more. And that's why there are so many people saying, I'm eating healthy. I am working out. Why aren't I losing weight? Well, because I eat healthy at maintenance. You can eat healthy at maintenance. Likewise, just an increase of your energy expenditure is not going to guarantee fat loss if you don't have some type of cognitive oversight over your foods to make sure that you stay in that caloric deficit. So that's very, very important to understand. So one, we're seeing that although cardio can increase energy expenditure, we still need to be careful about what's coming in because we can quickly just close that gap. Let's also talk about something else that I think is really important. It's called energy compensation. So it actually seems like there's some sort of point of diminishing returns with increasing energy out, meaning, and I'm going to show you this graph here. Now, when we look at the graph on the right, it appears that there's a point where increases in activity result in the body trying to then conserve energy. This can be manifested from less overall movement. Remember what I talked about, me being the hands talker that I am? I will slow down. My husband will be like, oh, are you in a calorie deficit? I'm like, how did you know? He's like, because you're not using your hands as much. Your body starts shifting and doing these little things to conserve energy. So you will actually start moving a little bit less. So we do have to be cautious of that energy compensation effect that's there. So with that being said, now let's move into another piece of this puzzle. Which one is better? We understand that cardio can increase energy out Awesome. Okay, let's use that then as a tool in our fat loss phase. But should you use more of steady state cardio or should you use more HIIT? Now, oftentimes those that are fans of interval training or high intensity interval training, they will use something called EPOC, which is excess post-oxygen consumption. So many people have suggested that interval training is better for fat loss because it has a higher EPOC effect. Let's talk about the difference between steady state and intensity or high intensity training. So now that we know, awesome, cardio is going to help increase that energy out a little bit. Let's move into the next question, which is, should then I do steady state or should I do interval type of training or HIIT, high intensity interval training? Which one is going to be best for my goals as far as really increasing that energy expenditure? So there's a few things that I want to look at with this. Many people have suggested that interval training is going to be better for fat loss because it has a higher EPOC effect. EPOC is basically post-training. There's this time frame that requires some more recovery. There's this time frame where your body's actually still going to be burning more calories than it normally would because of the increase in heart rate and the increased effects from that interval. A lot of people have said high intensity training, that's where it's at because you get this EPOC effect, so you burn way more calories after than you just burn during, so it's way better than steady state. Let's look at the research though. What does the research say in regards to this? So this is an interesting study that was done, and I'm going to show you just a graph of this. So what they did is they took sprint intervals, HIIT, and cardio, and they compared them. They compared and looked at about how many calories burned during the training and how many calories burned post, or that EPOC effect, and what that looks like overall for somebody's fat loss phase. So with sprint intervals, what they did was 6 rounds of 30 seconds max effort with a 4-minute recovery. Then they took a group of HIIT where they did 4 rounds, 4 minutes, 95% max heart rate with a 3-minute recovery. Then they took a cardio group that did 30 minutes of cardio at about 80% max heart rate. So that's more of the top zone 3 for cardio. So they measured and looked at what was burned during the training, and they saw that cardio for 30 minutes actually burned the most. It burned 284 calories, which they knew that that was going to happen. And then HIIT burned the next amount, that was 246, and sprinting burned the lowest during, which was 161. Now, what they were looking at, though, is what did they continue to burn at this higher rate afterwards? What was that EPOC effect? And in the end, did it total the interval training being a better option? So with the during calories burned and the EPOC effect, what did that total? Well, it looks like cardio was still the winner because cardio still continued to burn at a little bit higher rate, and it ended at 348 calories. HIIT ended around 329, and then the sprinting was even less than that. 271 seemed to be the total. Now, the results at the end of that study were the researchers saying the EPOC is unlikely to be the major contributor to fat loss and body composition changes previously observed following high-intensity interval exercise training. Another factor that we need to look at when we're comparing steady-state cardio to HIIT or sprinting is actually going to be the recovery needs of the individual. So the higher intensity cardio, the more it is going to tap into recovery needs. So this can influence how well we're going to feel going into our next resistance training session. And if your goal is to grow muscle and really prioritize those resistance training sessions, then we need to be cautious that the HIIT isn't going to impair recoverability of your body and thus have you going into the resistance training sessions maybe a little under recovered from that HIIT. I've known women who are trying to do HIIT 4 or 5 times a week, plus on top of it, trying to do training sessions of 4, 5, 6 times a week. There is a possibility of us seeing some effects of lack of recoverability as we move into those training sessions with trying to do so much HIIT and resistance training as far as growing muscles. Now, I have an autoimmune disease called Hashimoto's and hypothyroidism. So my recoverability is already somewhat compromised. So me trying to use HIIT and trying to grow muscle by using resistance training, I have to be very cautious about how I balance those. So I choose to opt in for steady state over HIIT just to make sure that I'm recovering really well. It has a huge impact on my thyroid and how well I feel. Another thing to consider is if you are somebody who, for one reason or another, has a lot of stress in their life, or isn't sleeping as well, or is in a really low calorie deficit, already your recoverability is going to be lowered a bit. So introducing too much intensity workouts could end up working against you. So when it comes to choosing which type of cardio is best for you, we really do have to look at those different factors as well. So how can we apply all of this information? There are just a few things that we need to remember. One, cardio can aid in increasing that energy expenditure, but it doesn't make up for poor diet adherence. End of story. Don't forget it. The other thing is there does seem to be a point of diminishing returns in which you may go and spend 60 minutes doing cardio, but then come home and just not even want to move for the rest of the day. So just keep in mind that we're not looking to do excessive amounts, but just the right amount. The next one is HIIT or steady state, which is best for you. So I think you need to think about one, which one do you actually enjoy the most? Which one do you enjoy the most? Because if you're going to say, oh, I really want to do HIIT and put it in your program, but you hate HIIT, you're not going to end up doing it. So choose the one you enjoy the most, because as we saw from the data, it really doesn't matter. Choose the one you enjoy the most. 2, think about your recovery needs. Don't be choosing HIIT 3, 4, 5 times a week if you're also trying to recover from your weightlifting, from your life stress, from your lack of sleep because you're watching Netflix all the time, from your calorie deficit. Think about your recovery needs. Maybe if you really enjoy it, do it 1 to 2 times a week. If you feel like your recovery is impaired, maybe lower it to 1 time and substitute the other time with a steady state. There are so many options, but hopefully with this information, you are now empowered to know what cardio does, what it doesn't, and how to properly incorporate it into your lifestyle or your fat loss program.